Welcome to On the Sidelines, the show that discusses sports and how sports intersects our lives. I am your host, Paul McGrath, and I am glad that you can join us for this show. Today's show will focus on the latest rage to help keep us physically fit. For many of us, the challenge to keep somewhat physically fit traces back to the presidency of John F. Kennedy in the early 1960s. Shortly after his inauguration, a conference on physical fitness was convened and the President's Council on Fitness was reorganized. Well, how far have we come? Many of us remember the jogging craze, of which I was a part. Participating in other established sports activities has kept many of us engaged. But what is the latest? Well, it seems to be something called pickleball. According to the Sports and Fitness Industry Association, there were 8.9 million players in the United States in the year 2022, with the number expected to increase to 22.9 million in 3 years. That number projects to be over 6% of the United States population. To help us discuss this phenomenon, On the Sidelines is pleased to have the father of pickleball in Westborough, Nelson Ball, and the commissioner of the YMCA's Morning Pickleball Extravaganza, George Fortier. Gentlemen, welcome to On the Sidelines.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Paul.
And Nelson, you're joining us from Florida, so we're glad you could make it and be on the show. But before I get to you, gentlemen, I just want to go back to a little bit of history that we found on the internet as far as how pickleball developed. And it goes back to a fellow, and we have his picture here. His name is Joel McPhee Pritchard, and he was a member of the United States House of Representatives for the state of Washington from the year 1973 to 1985. And in 1965, he came home from a game of golf, and the family wanted to play badminton, but they couldn't find a shuttlecock. So he asked the family to devise a game, and supposedly pickleball became the answer, the conclusion to finding a lost shuttlecock. It was pickleball. Well, since 1965, it certainly has proliferated, and it is the latest rage in sports. So let's go back. Let's start with you, Nelson. We call you the granddaddy of the development of pickleball in Westborough. Can you let us know how it developed in Westborough and how you became involved?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Since I'm in Florida, I don't have my files or notes, but I've tried to put something together from memory. And what happened, I played tennis for like 45 years. We were all in our 80s, and we disintegrated kind of due to a lot of health issues. Also played tennis in Florida, and while I was down here, I heard of this game called pickleball. So I went over to this gym where they were playing and walked in, and here was these people playing on a court half the size of a tennis court, about 40 by 22. They had a paddle in their hand. They had what looked like a big size wiffle ball, and they were playing away. So I said, gee, this sounds fun. Can I learn? And they said, sure. They gave me a paddle, and I learned the game. And I said, wow. So when I got back to Massachusetts that fall, what the problem was that snowbirds in Florida, and you might say sunbirds in Arizona, when they returned to their northern homes, they were looking for to continue their game. So I'm not really sure, but I found about 4 couples. And very first games we played was at a Major Taylor Elementary School in Boylston. We took painter's tape, the blue 1-inch tape. We put it on the tennis court, and we started playing there. Our next move, we went over to the tech school in Marlborough, Hudson, and they let us use a few of the worst courts, you might say, to play in. And one of our fellows, Dennis Pollard, he devised a plastic tube, and he used, a child's big chalk and they let us chalk on there because the rain would wash it off. And then for that following winter, in 2011, I approached Betsy Moquin, who was then the executive director of the Y in Westborough, and told her about the sport. And she was very enthusiastic. So we went to work. We couldn't use the gym, but they had a workout room. And we were able to put, again, the old painter's tape down on the floor. It was kind of interesting to play because one wall was completely mirrored. So you had to be sure you weren't watching yourself, but you were watching your opponent.
You could be hitting your own ball, Nelson, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's what we played. So then the other place that started that you could play indoors was at the Northborough Town Hall.
Oh, God.
There was a couple over there, Tom Hayes, who was a funeral director, and his friend Eric, I think let's call, and you played in that gym, which was very close because you're almost on top of the bleachers, and you often hit the basketball. But we worked and we played on that. The next move was that the town of Marlborough started some outdoor courts with a kind of a unique feature. They had come up with a design that they could move their net up and down. So the court was supposed to serve both as a pickleball court and volleyball. I don't think there was much volleyball ever played, but there was a lot of pickleball played there. Then the next thing was we still played indoors at the Y. We played outside over in that area. And then we started playing, what's the school down there? My memory, in Westborough, the elementary school.
Fales, Hastings.
Hastings.
Yeah.
We played outside in Hastings, and we had a pretty large group there that played inside and out, and then we played at Y. And the next step was that I approached the town recreation group. I will say they weren't very receptive to the idea, but they finally allowed us to play in the old gym, which was the Forbes High School building.
Right.
And they let us, we couldn't paint the floor, but they let us again put a more permanent type of tape. And we had a fold-up net, which we used. And then the next step was in the Shrewsbury Tennis Club. The Shrewsbury Tennis Club gave us 2 courts. And what we would do, we would take 25 pieces of tape, which were reusable, actually, set up the court. And then we, on the tennis courts, we used the tennis net, and we kind of, I'd say, borrowed weights from their gym, took bungee cords, lowered the tennis net, because the tennis net on pickleball is about 3 inches lower in the middle. And we played there for 2 or 3 years. Then finally, we went back to the Y, and at that time there was a new director, Jeff Liliberti, and he was very receptive. And he said, "Okay, while we were playing upstairs, we really needed the height to make this game work." And they allowed us to paint 4 courts on the gym. 2 courts on the gym, because the court was divided, and the other half was left for basketball. And then the group just grew so large that they finally agreed to let us paint 2 more courts. And we had 4 courts of play, and the place would, there'd be 50 people there, and there'd be 16 people playing, and another 30, 40, which is the program George has picked up and done such a great job continuing. The next step was the town of Westborough took over, you may recall, and they rehabbed and reshaped the whole Forbes building, and therefore we got kicked out of that gym, and that's when Jeff let us come into the Y. The next time I think we've been in the Y now. I can't believe the original Y. We were 211, and I can't recall the exact date when we moved in and permitized the courts. And then 2 years ago, unfortunately, they had a leak kid kicked a basketball up and broke a valve of the fire alarm system. I mean, of the water system. And then they've repainted the floors and thankfully paint our lines underneath the final coat. So now we won't have to worry about our lines wearing off with the basketball players. So, we've had great help. While we had a little resistance in Westborough, we had one fellow, I'm trying to think of his name, it escapes me at the moment, who later became the chairman, and they backed us. And then a fellow came down from Maine who was the head of the rec, and he'd had a pickleball in his town. He was and then we now have Jen Kirkland, who is a head of the director and she's been a great backer. And then in 5 years ago, in 19, the town was going to put in 2 tennis courts. May remember they were applying for a grant, as I recall, and they had to put a base down in order to apply for the grant. Didn't get the grant, but then found some money and we're going to build. So a whole bunch of us approached them and said, would you be willing to build just 1 tennis court and 4 pickleball courts? And they were very good about it, and they agreed to that. And that's how we finally got our first outdoor, really dedicated courts in Westborough. We played on that for a year, and we realized that the other court was used very little, maybe in the morning occasionally. But since there were 14 more courts in town, we went back to the selectmen and said, look, there really isn't use over there. Any chance we could convert the second 4 courts? And they were open to it. The only problem we ran into was it was COVID now. And even though it's not a big income, the rec does get a fee income from all the programs they use and hold in town. And they couldn't do that. So I said, get me a quote. And we went ahead and we built the extra 4 courts with one significant change. We redirected them north and south so as not to have the sun in your eyes, morning and evening as we did on the other courts. But I wanted to mention that there were some people who played really a part in getting this way back even. We had, let me see if I can get all those. I know Paul Walcott was one of the original ones. He even had it in his own yard. Carol Bishop has been there the last couple of years. George has helped out. Herb Berg, Bob Cunningham, and Bill, and I think of last name, Donna Bickle, all these folks. And then George and Marie and Eve Choi and Fred Dunphy have done a great job in educating, holding classes and things. We also did it with with the town library. And that's pretty much, what's built up the program in town. A lot of people have helped. When I have to do this, it just boggles my mind that it's been 13 years now, and the progression we went through. I'll tell you a funny story. When Shrewsbury, they opened a couple of courts over by White City. So a group has said, well, we'll come over and help you celebrate your opening. And there were 4 of us playing. Tom Hayes was 91. I was 90. Howard, can't think of his last name, was 87. And then we had a youngster, 75, playing with us. And we helped them dedicate their courts. So that's the beauty of this. I mean, for me, just to go over there and ride by the courts and not even play, but to see all these people having great time together, the sociability, the physical part of it, it's been a great to me to see what this has done. And I'm glad I've had the opportunity to do it, Paul.
Well, that's great, Nelson. I think you're a little modest there. The courts there at Chauncey Lake are also to many known as the Nelson P. Ball courts. And we're going to show some video here, Nelson. And if you could comment on the courts and what you have there, that would be great. So if we can, run the tape. If you can see that, Nelson, there you are.
Oh, yes. So you can see visually how the original courts went north and south, east and west. And then when we moved and set the ones to the right, they're north and that. One of the things where you notice all the people sitting up there in the back, we do have a little bit of a problem there in that the sun, and it's our hope to be putting up a pavilion so that people could be out of the sun in the summer. Because also, if they try to get too close to the bushes, we've been having trouble with ticks coming out. So you can see the crowd there. This is, I think, maybe it was one of the dedications. And we've had such a great group of people. I had a gentleman walk up to me about 2 months ago, and he said, "You saved my life, Nelson." I thought, now he's going to zing me with something. But no, what he said instead, what he said was, he said, "Listen, I retired, I think it was 60 days ago." He says, "After 30 days, I was going berserk." One of my friends, said to me, "Come over and play pickleball." He says, "I'm here 3 days a week." I said, "Well, that's great. I'm glad you're enjoying it as well as you are." So, you can, all ages can play. There's no limitation. And I think one of the things George knows, but many people may not be aware, is that, people, as they get older, they can still possibly walk. They may ride a bike. They might treadmill, but they don't walk side to side. Yeah. And the side to side motion, like ping pong and all, that tremendous help to your ankles. And your ankles play a predominant part in your balance. So pickleball has a real advantage to older people play, not just the sociability, which is such an important factor, particularly for single people and widows and widowers. It's been a great thing in that respect as well.
Okay, well, let's give you a break. We'll get to George here. And George, how did you get into pickleball?
All right, Paul.
In Westborough.
Sure.
Or maybe not Westborough. I don't know where you're from.
Well, I actually started in Upton. But before I even get to that, I just want to thank you for the promotion to commissioner. I mean, I think it was said in jest, and I appreciate that. I have been referred to as the mayor of pickleball at the Y. But Nelson's the one who deserves the title, and he's actually the godfather of pickleball. And you've already addressed that, so I won't say much about it. I want to repeat that without Nelson Ball, we wouldn't have pickleball in the town of Westborough. And we have beautiful courts because of Nelson Ball, and we have indoor play at the Y because of Nelson Ball. So he deserves a round of applause from now until infinity.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Nelson. How I got involved, I retired 6 years ago. And for the first year, having worked for about 42 years, I was a little restless. And I was going for long walks every day and trying to stay fit as best I could. And I was having lunch one day with my wife and her cousin, Jerry McDonald, who's a great pickleball player, a former 50-year tennis player. So he said to Ann when I stepped out of the room, "How's George doing in retirement?" And she said, "Well, he'll tell you he's enjoying it tremendously, but I think he's bored." So he said, "I think I have the perfect game for him, pickleball." So he came back, and I came back into the room, and he said, "Do you want to try something out?" I said, "I'd be happy to." So at the time, there were a couple courts at Kiwanis Beach in Upton, and they played on Saturday mornings for a couple of hours. So Jerry and I went over to the courts, and he introduced me, gave me some basics, and they had an extra paddle that was a wooden paddle, and that's not fun to play with, Nelson, right? So
right.
I played with this wooden paddle that
right to your hand.
weighed me down. I thought I was going to have a tennis elbow after 2 hours. And finally I said, "This paddle feels real heavy." And Jerry said, "Oh, I've got an extra one in my bag." So he let me borrow his paddle. It made a huge difference because it was a much lighter paddle. And I started there. And then I went to play in Grafton and played in Grafton with some great people for a couple of years, outdoor, play only. And just to trace my history as you did, so then we played indoors at the town hall that abuts the senior center in Grafton for a couple of years. And then I went to play at the Y, I think maybe 1 or 2 winters later, and that's where I met Nelson. It's probably 5 years ago or something. And since then, we've played together. We've run some clinics together, and we've had a lot of fun with pickleball, haven't we? We've had some celebrations of birthdays, celebrations of courts and everything. And then I've since played, and I've tried a number of different venues, number of different courts. Pickleball is everywhere. There's a reason it's called the fastest growing sport in America, and in the world for that matter. So I've played in Natick. I've played in Shrewsbury at the courts. I've played at the town hall in Westborough, where sometimes when the ball hits the floor, it dies. It hits a hole and it doesn't bounce.
So it's like the old Celtics on the parquet floor.
Exactly,
You had to know where the bounce
exactly.
is at. Yeah.
we were in Amelia Island last winter, and I found some courts in Amelia Island and played there while we were there. And this is important. This is generational, and the younger generations are catching on very rapidly. 2 years ago, my family was in Algonquin, Maine, and we knew there were courts in Algonquin. So my son, who's developed into a very good pickleball player, and his kids and my daughter's kids came out one day. We found an empty court in Algonquin, and 3 generations played pickleball. And that was tremendous fun. We had a wonderful time doing that. So, wherever I'm going anywhere, I'm going to be looking for courts too. And as Nelson mentioned, when I was new to pickleball at the Y that winter, Nelson was very kind with his time and generous in offering some tips, and other people there as well. And I appreciated that, and I hope that I continue to do the same thing every day at the Y. But for a couple of years, Eve Choi and Marie Santos and I, we ran some pickleball clinics for newbies at the Y. And I know that we've taught a lot of people to play pickleball, and they're still playing today. And they're playing today, and some of them, I hate to admit, are better than we are, but that's what you get for teaching younger people. But I want to give another example of this age differential and how it really doesn't matter in pickleball. I was telling Paul when I first talked to him about this, a week ago or something, that I was playing at the Y this past winter, and my partner was 65 and I'm 75, and the people were playing were 28 and 38. And we played a competitive game, and when the game was over, I just happened to think about it. It wasn't intended as an excuse, but just it was an aha moment for me. I said, we lost, I think we played a 9 because there's a lot of people instead of what the game should be 11. And I think the score was 9-7. And I said, I just want you two to realize that your average age is 33. Our average age is 70. So I hope you're still playing when you're 70.
Good for you.
And that's, and that can occur any day, wherever you play, whether it's the Chauncey courts or the Y court or any place. And that's what makes it fun. And as I mentioned, we had a holiday pickleball party at the Y. Nelson was there, and we recognized him, of course. And 45 people were there. And the average there is, between 35 and 50 on any given day. So it's an incredibly popular sport. I could give you some numbers if you want, but it's played, I did a little research. It's played in China, in Japan, in Italy, in England, in Switzerland, in the Philippines, in Guam, and on cruise ships now. So it's everywhere.
And I think when you play, you two can tell me, what is the average, if there is such a thing, of how long it takes a game? In other words, for golf, I love golf. I'm out there for 4 hours. But pickleball is really concentrated, I think.
Yeah, it depends on who the 4 players are. If it's 4 players who are about the same skill level and competitive, an average game is probably 15 minutes. If it's a new person playing on one of the teams, the game could be over in 5 minutes. So what's the only part that's a little bit frustrating is, when you play with that many people in only 3 courts, the Y has changed when they redid it to 4 courts to 3 courts, but the numbers have gone up. And so the average wait time now is about 20 minutes between games.
So
It's a lot. Yeah, so you have a break. But some people who are so active will walk the track while waiting, and others will do yoga in the corner. And and stretch and all of that stuff. So
well, let's take a peek at the Y. We got a couple of pictures here from the Y. This is where George spends most of his time. There we go. That's, as you can see, it's hard to There are 3 courts side by each there.
Yeah, I recognize. I think that's Howard in the foreground.
Oh, I couldn't tell you that.
I think it is.
Anyway,
can you see him, Nelson?
Those pictures show 4 courts. Yeah, that's the older one.
So anyway, there you are. So the people stand up against the wall there.
Right.
And why don't you talk about the paddle and how you know who plays? I mean, I went and I said, do they have a Chinese system here of who plays? But you do have a system on who plays and how you you don't play with the same person every time.
Right. There are stacks of 4, and on top of each stack of paddles, there's signage that says winner and runner-up, because these days nobody wants to admit that they lost the game. So instead, you're a runner-up.
Oh, I thought you came in second place.
You do, but it's runner-up. So when you come off the court after a game, the two winners put their paddles in one group and the two runners in the other group.
Yeah.
But it's, you take the next four, so you're always mixing people that way, and it works out very well.
So you
play
never
with a
know
lot
who
of
you're playing with or against. It's just,
you don't.
You grab
you
the
don't.
paddle.
Yeah, you really don't. And as new people come in, like people are there, some people there at 8:15, 8:30, others come in at 9, they'll just put their paddle wherever there's an opening.
Right.
So if there's 2 paddles in one stack, they'll put it there. And every stack of 4 goes out on the court. So it's 4 in, 4 out. There are different systems that different places use. I've been playing a little bit at Teamworks in Northborough lately, and what they do is the winners stay on, and the losers come out, and the winners split up, but after 2 games, they come out too. So nobody's staying on the courts the whole 2-hour time period. So it works out very well for people.
All right. Well, I'm not asking you two how do you play this game or what it's all about. We've gone to we have a video here on how to play. So let's see what they say and if you two agree.
Hiya, my name is Stacy Townsend, and let's learn to play better pickleball with Pickler and USA Pickleball. Your friends, coworkers, the news, celebrities, everybody is talking about the fastest growing sport, pickleball. Now it's time for you to join the fun.
Pickleball can be played as a doubles game, where you have 2 players on each side of the court. Or it can be played as a singles game, where there's only 1 person on each side of the court. To start a game, decide who will serve first. Any fair method will do. Once you decide who serves first, the player starting on the right-hand side of the court will serve. Pickleball uses an underhand serve, or you can use a drop serve, and the serve must go cross-court. Pickleball has a 2-bounce rule, which means the first 2 shots of a rally must bounce. So both the serve must bounce and the return must bounce. From there, you may hit the pickleball off the bounce or out of the air, which we call a volley.
The rally will continue until someone makes a fault.
For instance, there's a double bounce, someone hits the pickleball out of bounds, or someone hits the pickleball into the net. All shots that are in the court or on the lines of the court are in, except that the serve must be in the service box beyond the kitchen line. If the serve hits the kitchen or the kitchen line, then that is out. Out balls are called by the player or team on the side of the pickleball court where the pickleball bounces. Be sure to call out balls loudly and only when you see the pickleball out of bounds.
Out! Now let's talk about scoring in pickleball, which admittedly can be a little confusing. First, you can only score if you're the serving team.
So if you win the rally as a serving team, you win a point, you switch sides of the court, and the same server will serve but in the opposite direction. If you lose the rally as a serving team, then the serve moves to the next player. If the serve goes to the other side of the court, which we call a side out, then the person on the right-hand side of the court will go first in doubles pickleball. In singles pickleball, you will serve on the side of the court based on your score. In doubles pickleball, the first serving team only has 1 service turn. This is why you start every doubles game with a loud "Let's go 2." After the first side out, each side then has 2 service turns. In other words, each player gets a shot at serving.
Speaking of the score, be sure to shout it out loudly before every serve.
The first number is your score. The second number is the other side's score. And the third number is which service turn you are on for doubles pickleball. Singles pickleball, which is less popular than doubles pickleball, will only have 2 numbers. For instance, 0-0, because each side will only have 1 service turn. Most pickleball games are played to 11 points, and you must win by 2 points. One other unique rule to the sport of pickleball is that you cannot hit the ball out of the air while you are standing in the non-volley zone. In other words, no volleys in the kitchen. This also means that your momentum cannot carry you into the kitchen when hitting a volley.
Kitchen.
Reaching over the non-volley zone line above the surface area of the court is permitted. You can also hit the pickleball after the pickleball is bounced in the non-volley zone. You can even stand in the kitchen, although not recommended, as long as you are not volleying the pickleball. So again, no volleys in the kitchen.
So let's put it all together.
We have an underhand serve, must go cross court. Both the serve and the return must bounce. If the serving team wins the rally, they get a point and switch sides. Remember, you only switch sides if you win a point as the serving team. If the serving team loses, then everyone stays put, no points are awarded, and the serve goes to the next person. First team to 11 points wins. At the end of the game, be sure to paddle tap and give kudos for a great game. And lastly, remember, no volleys in the kitchen.
So do you have it all down? If not, no worries. Get out there, join the fun and the fastest growing sport, pickleball. If you like this pickleball video, be sure to share it with your pickleball friends and partners, and we'll see you out on the pickleball courts.
Okay, pickleballers, any comments on that?
Yeah, I can't wait to react to it. Thank you, Paul. First of all, it's an excellent video, but in reality, I'd say most people, it takes them probably 3 to 6 months to learn how to score, where to stand, all of that stuff. Some people catch on quicker than others, but some people will look to the experienced player to tell them where to stand and what the score is. Right, Nelson? Because they're just
Yeah,
not,
I think that's one of the things that people are really good about, helping newer people and offering, suggestions and showing them what it is.
Right.
And Paul, I have a paddle here. Would you like me to hold it up?
You may hold it up. We're going to talk about equipment. So show us, because I know a lot of people, many people think that this is mini tennis. But in tennis, you have a racket. But in pickleball, we have a paddle. So if you can talk about paddles, we'll talk about equipment. And what is that one, Nelson?
This paddle is actually from a professional pickleball team in Chicago. That's their logo, and it's called Chicago Slice. So you've got pro teams now playing. This one is fairly light. There's a regulation of how much size you can have, and then there's weight. The heavier the paddle, the more power, but less control. The lighter the paddle, more control, but you have to hit harder. So it depends on your age and your strength, what you have. And that's why when you order a paddle like from Pickleball Central, you have the advantage within 30 days of returning it, which most places, once you buy it, that's it. And as long as it's not damaged, they'll take it back and change it over for you. Go ahead, George.
Well, just before I get to George, is pickleball something like golf? I mean, there must be rules and regulations on sizes of paddle balls and sizes of balls and the dimensions of the court, which you had to, when you were measuring it off in the early days, there must be rules and regulations somewhere.
Oh, yes, there are. Go ahead, George.
For recreational play, that's not so much an issue, but if people are playing in tournaments, it absolutely is an issue. But here's another paddle sample. This is called the Gearbox, GX5 Gearbox.
Oh, that's
and what this says on the side of it is USAPA approved. So that means it's an approved paddle to play in tournaments.
USPA.
USAPA, United States American Pickleball Association. Right.
So
we're
really formal now.
We are. And this also designates the weight of this
I
paddle.
see,
It's 7.8 ounces. Gearbox comes in an 8.2 ounce paddle as well. Now, some people prefer the heavier paddle. It has its pros and cons. That's a very lightweight paddle.
Yeah, so it's a little bit larger than a ping pong.
Yes, it is.
But not much. I mean,
but there are so many different paddles on the market now. As Nelson was alluding to, some are wider, so you have a bigger sweet spot. Some are longer. Some have a longer handle, and that's for the people who use two-handed backstroke returns. So there's different weights. This comes in an 8.2 ounce as well. I've tried the paddle. I suggest when you play with people, like you can do the 30-day return thing, or you can just ask people to borrow their paddle for a game. I've done that a number of times before buying a paddle, and I've loaned this paddle to a few people, and I know 2 that play now who have this same paddle because they like the feel of it. So the advantage of a lighter weight paddle is you don't get tennis elbow, you don't get shoulder elbow as quickly, but you have to provide the power.
Right.
So with a heavier paddle, the paddle provides a lot of the power, but it's
more of a strain.
Right, it's more of a strain on you, okay? So that's one paddle. I have one other. Oh, and here's another thing. As I was saying, somebody, I don't know who to give credit to, had the idea, just put email labels on your paddle. you know,
Just
mail
hold that up.
labels.
Yeah, so George has
Okay,
his
so you can see that?
return label here.
Right.
Return to sender.
So you don't
There we
have
go,
to
yeah.
write it. So if somebody's looking and they pick up the 4 paddles for the next group, they'll say, George. So they'll call your name instead of walking up and down the court looking for someone, okay? The
So
other
there aren't too many people that have a Chicago slice. Nelson, do you use that when you play, or is that just for show?
No, I really use it. I wanted to comment, well, as George was saying, there's different configurations, but there is a strict limit as the amount of area. In other words, you can take the same area and shape it differently, but the total square inches, or I think, of the paddle has to be within a regulation.
Oh, I see, yeah.
So there are some people play with non-regulation, but if you're playing with regulation, it does have specific parameters as the total size, regardless of how it's configured.
Right. So another thing to protect your paddle, because paddles get tapped at the net after a game, and they get put down on a table, sometimes on the ground when you play outdoors, is you can buy a paddle cover. Pickleball.com, I got this free cover when I ordered a paddle from them. And Pickleball Central is a very good place to order because they have a multitude of paddles, and you can put in certain criteria: lightweight, heavy, big face, wider, longer, heavier handle stuff. So that's good to know. In the past 2 months, I'd say I get a lot of information regarding pickleball. There's probably a proliferation of paddles that are being developed every week, every month. This is a new paddle. It's a brand new paddle, and I've seen about 10 new paddles developed in the past couple months. It's called Carbon Pickle, and it's Pro Series. And as you can tell, see, I have my name on that as well. Somebody has a label maker.
That was probably more expensive. It looks thicker.
Well, it's a little bit thicker, and it has a hole in it that doesn't really bother you. You still have the same sweet spot on it. And it's a carbon face. Some people like to slice. It helps to do that. And also, it's very lightweight. This is a 7-point-ounce paddle, just like this one. So it was very little transition for me to switch from one to the other. And I love the paddle. I've been playing with it only about 2 weeks. You can feel that. It's and you can.
You got a good grip.
It's got a good
grip.
yeah. And because of the colors, I call it my Guinness paddle because it's the black and tan. You see?
Have a few when you play, yeah.
Right. No, that's after Paul. Do you want to see balls or?
Yeah, we'll see balls. Before we get to the balls, how about instruction? I mean, where did you two learn how to play? Did someone teach you, or did you just pick it up, or where would a person, a young person, an old, any person, learn how to play? Just the mechanics.
I think one of the important things, George, is that people who do know how to play are very willing to share how they play. So you watch some other people. When I first learned, I went to the Pickleball Association, got a rule book, I bought some books. Even then, there were a lot of books out of things. But I think it's a great deal of it is sharing. I do want to point out one other thing that George alluded to with the paddle. The paddle in our ball creates noise. And the number of communities are now limiting where you can put pickleball courts. In Falmouth, in fact, they built 8 courts. There was a suit by neighbors and they closed them down. So now there's a great enthusiasm. And just the other day I read there was a pole, as George said, with a hole, but with a lot of holes, which cuts down the surface of hitting, but doesn't detract from the able to hit, but it does cut down on the noise. So the industry is working diligently to reduce the noise so that courts can be in a lot of areas. We're fortunate, there at Chauncey where we're out by ourselves and the neighbors are not close, but there are places that the noise does become a factor, yes.
Hey, I can continue with that, Nelson. Wellesley, the town of Wellesley has put up a big stink about the noise from pickleball courts and trying to shut them down. But the other one, more locally, right down the street, St. Luke's Church here in Westborough, the pastor, Father Diego, is a pickleball player. And he put up a pickleball court in the parking lot last year, had the lines drawn and everything. And it went well for a little while until the neighbors started complaining about the noise. And from what
this is just one court.
Right.
You don't
and
have
from what I understand, people couldn't start till 10 a.m., so there's no 7 a.m. playing, and had to stop by sundown or something. So, I don't know. I don't think some of these complaints are really legitimate, but I'm biased as hell because I'm a pickleball player.
Well, let's get to the balls. Talk about what's.
All right. So
it looks like I could go play wiffle ball, baseball.
Well,
here.
you could. All right, I think I have 4 here, unless I drop one on the floor.
That's all right.
But there's a distinction between indoor and outdoor balls. So this ball is an indoor ball. It has bigger holes. It's not as fast as an outdoor ball. It comes in a variety of colors, from yellow, green, blue, orange. All right, and it has, you can see that? See the difference in the size?
Yeah, you can see
this
the
has
difference,
more holes and
Yeah.
smaller holes. That's an outdoor ball.
But the circumference is the same. It's
Right,
just
right. The reason you
makeup
don't
of
want
it.
an indoor ball outdoors is because you don't want, air to push it aside. So that's an outdoor ball. It tends to be quicker. And then also an indoor, you play usually on a hardwood surface. And this is an outdoor ball too.
Yeah.
You can play with any ball, but it's better if you play with the ball, whether it's designated for outdoors or indoors.
So when you play, does everyone bring their own ball, or does the wife supply them, or what? How?
Yeah,
What do you do with? How do you do the balls?
It depends on where you are. The Y will supply some balls, but of late they've been saying, we just gave you some balls a couple of weeks ago. At Teamworks, there's a sign that says, bring your own balls.
Yeah.
And most people who play have balls. I have about 6 balls in my bag at all times, both indoors and outdoors.
So the ball, they're standard.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have any effect.
And you can get a 3-pack of balls at Dick's Sporting Goods in Northborough for $10.99. It's all different price on the balls too.
One of the reasons that the balls disappear, frankly, it's not much, I don't believe it's intent, but you throw a ball in your jacket pocket or in your pants pocket, or you throw it in your backpack and you walk off with it, because we run into that. Yeah, they do disappear. As George says, some clubs chip in money. They have a bucket, and money, and then they buy the ball. So it depends on where you're playing. But George is right. Most players will carry 2 or 3 in their bag, and it shouldn't be a problem on the court.
How long do you think a pickleball would last? I mean, if you're a few games in perpetuity.
Depends on the surface.
Depends on
surface.
That's true. Yeah.
If you can get a month or 2 out of it, that's probably good, I think.
Yeah, I looked on the internet. There's a proliferation not only of paddles and balls, but outerwear, the shoes. Is there a special shoe for pickleball, or do you just wear tennis or sneakers? Nelson, you help us out on that?
Should I show them, George, or shoot?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
let me put my sunglasses on, Nelson. Go ahead. There we go.
Notice the brand and the color. That's an ASICS.
ASICS. They're known mostly for running shoes. They were the first one to come out with the pickleball, but now with the popularity, all of the major manufacturing, I've stuck with the ASICS. I've had very good luck with them.
I too. I'm an ASICS proponent. I have about 6 or 7 pairs of ASICS shoes. You want to get court shoes, not running shoes. Too many people have fallen on the courts because the sole isn't made the same. It's not made for the side-by-side movement, and they fall wearing running shoes.
Well, this may be a difficult question, but what would be the difference, if we know it, between like a tennis shoe and a pickleball shoe?
They're essentially the same.
They're the same.
But it's all marketing.
Right.
It's marketing.
Yep.
Yeah. The only thing I think you find with the many of the pickleball shoes have holes. I mean, the material it gives you better airing for outside play. Your heat don't get as hot.
Yep.
But more and more companies are calling them pickleball shoes.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
But if somebody's looking, you can just go on Amazon and type in pickleball shoes, and you'll see everything that's for sale.
Well, you're inundated. I looked,
right,
and it's like,
right.
oh, wait. For
Right.
me, not knowing anything, it's like, wait,
Right.
way too much here.
Right.
But we talk about the outerwear and the clothing. I see there are special hats for pickleball. Can we see some?
Sure.
I know Nelson has one and George has one.
Well, this is specific to Westborough. This says Westborough Pickleball Court. I think Nelson made these in his basement or something, and then he handed them out.
Yeah.
So he had these made for us, the Westborough people, which is very nice.
Yeah, those are nice hats.
People wear basically baseball caps, and in the summertime they wear broader brims to keep the sun out of their face and stuff, right?
Okay, well, we've talked about one negative aspect, and that is the sound. The other negative, somewhat negative aspect is not only has pickleball proliferated, but the visits to emergency rooms at hospitals has proliferated because of this. So let's talk about injuries. Let's talk, should we do warm-ups? We have a physical fitness guru, Karen McKenzie, is going to talk about physical fitness and warm-ups for pickleball.
Hi everybody, this is Karen McKenzie with some advice for all you pickleballers out there, and I know there are a lot of you. It's become very popular. The first thing you need to remember is to make sure you have the right shoes on. Make sure it's a tie shoe. Keeps that foot nice and stable so you're not apt to go side to side with your foot. Take a fall, we don't want that. It's important to make sure you're in good shape. I hope you've done your strength training and some stretching and also some aerobic work to get that heart rate up a little bit because you're going to be moving back and forth and up and down. Another thing to remember is to stretch before playing, and there's lots of things you can do. You can reach up or drop down or just do some lunges, side to side lunges with your arms. Also, I hope you're doing some balance exercises. If you're taking any courses or going to your senior center, you will always be able to find balance exercises, and it's important. You don't want to lose your balance while you're running back and forth on the court. If I had a final piece of advice, I might say, and I think it's important, is stay hydrated. It's important. You can stop and have a little drink now and then. Seniors don't usually drink enough anyway, so always keep that in mind. If you keep everything in mind, you'll be sure to have a great time on the court. For more exercise ideas and tips on how to stay healthy, tune into Fit for Life with Karen. That's me, right here on Westborough TV. And now back to Paul.
All right, well, thanks, Karen. There you go, gentlemen. I mean, you have to do what you have to do. It's like any sport, I suppose. Mm-hmm. You do warm-ups and get ready.
I think one of your best safeties, as George already alluded to, is the right shoes. There's no question people who do fall, in most cases, don't have a good shoe on. The tennis shoe is built for that strength of side to side. And the other place I think most of the falls occur is people trying to walk backwards for a lob. Mm. You cannot walk backwards. You've either got to turn to the side or completely turn around, where the odds of your falling are very high. So that's one of the really important risks that most tennis players know that, but people who do not, and I would average that probably 60% of pickleball players were former tennis players. That's why they pick up the game quickly. But I caution people, do not try to run backwards. It's a real chance of a fall.
That's really important, what you just said, Nelson. And just one more comment on the shoes. I've seen people playing in the shoes I'm wearing today, hiking shoes, and that doesn't belong on the court. They're too heavy for one thing, and they're probably going to help you fall. So the don't run backwards rule, of all the people we've taught, that's the number one rule. Don't run backwards. It isn't worth it. Whether you're 35 or 85, it isn't worth it because you might trip over your own feet. And the other one that's equally important, I think, particularly when the ball is hit between you, and players try to hit the ball down the middle, so it causes confusion or people don't know who to go for it, and in many instances, nobody goes for it, is call it. Call it. It avoids collisions. I've seen too many collisions on the courts because people both go for it, both swing at it, and one person gets hit in the head.
Well, my limited knowledge, George, of people of your pickleball players, is you try to hit the ball between two people so that they hit each other.
It's a strategy.
It goes just the opposite, George. We're trying to kill each other here. I'm kidding, but that is part of the strategy.
Well, it is. It is part of the strategy. You know, either lob over their heads if they're playing too close to the net, or hit it between them, hoping it'll cause some confusion, you know. It's a way of getting points, but if you're on the receiving end of that, you need to protect yourself in whatever way you can.
And the other thing I learned was the term the kitchen.
Right.
I don't know whoever came up with the kitchen. But
the people who invented the game back in 1965. Right. It's also called the non-volley zone. It's 7 feet from on either side of the net. And in some courts, the better courts, in my opinion, they painted it entirely different color.
Oh, I
like
see.
you'll see
I
the
see.
court's blue,
Yeah.
but the kitchen area is green or something, or a lighter shade of blue and a darker shade of blue. So it really stands out. So,
Well, Nelson Ball and George Fortier, I want to thank you for coming on and helping us explain this great new phenomenon, pickleball. Anybody have any lasting comments they'd like to make?
well, there's some terminology in pickleball too, and one is to get pickled, and that's what you don't want to do if you're a player. So the game goes to 11, we play to 9. To get pickled means you lost 11-0 or 9-0, and it's kind of embarrassing.
We should have a mercy rule. Now, in golf, there's the general rules of golf, and then you have the local rules.
Right.
Now, based on what you tell me, the Y has a local rule that you don't play till 11, you play to 9.
Right.
Now, when you play to 9, do you still have to win by 2, or is it 9?
We
what,
don't.
what are your local
It's
rules?
first to 9.
First to 9.
Yeah.
I'd like to comment. One of the other things probably would be the best tip you could give anyone is how they hold their paddle. In other words, you should always have your paddle up in the middle ready, because you can go to forehand or backhand. And most starting people, they hang the racket down by their thigh, or they don't realize that you've got to have it ready. So no matter which side of you the ball comes, you're ready to position it.
That's great advice. And you've watched a few games last week. That ball is coming at you pretty fast sometimes.
Well, some of those people, boom, they're going right at you.
And it's not only in terms of returning the ball, it's protection. If you have your paddle up here, you can protect your face. Something. If it's at your side, you have no protection.
Right. George, I apologize. I know you brought some fashion designer clothing here. Can you show us some fashion designer clothing?
Yeah,
that
just a couple of things.
This is
This one is in terms of pickleball language here, and I don't know if you can see it, but what it says is, "Dink responsibly, don't
Right
get
over here.
dink responsibly, don't get smashed." So Nelson knows what a dink is. It's when you just barely put the ball over the net and somebody's standing back at the service line or something, they can't get to it. But if you don't dink responsibly, meaning you hit it up high and someone's standing there, they'll smash it at you. So that's the meaning to this one.
well, if you dink it over the net,
Right.
and it's going to bounce twice, aren't you allowed to come in the kitchen? Or
They can come in the kitchen
What-
as long as it bounces in the kitchen.
as long as it bounces.
But then they can smash it at you if it's high enough,
all
so-
this strategy, George.
Right. There is strategy. So this one here was given to me by my granddaughter. Maybe you can read it.
It says, "Papa is my name, pickleball is my game."
So
Now, is that the truth? That must be the truth, George.
yeah. So this is one I'm very proud to wear. So there's
I
also-
guess your grandkids know you.
Yeah, they do. They know me very well. And the other thing I'd like to say to people is, if you have a spouse or a serious significant other or adult children who are working, you don't have to buy another paddle. There's Father's Day, there's Christmas. I bought this paddle, but before that, the two my son bought for me, because he's a pickleball addict now too. So he said, "Dad, what do you want for Christmas?" I said, "A new paddle." So it's worked out very well. But it's a great game. Almost anybody can play it. You can find a court just about anywhere you go. And it's healthy. You're working out, you're moving, you're socializing, you meet some great people, and you learn about a lot of other things. People talk about their knee surgeries and hip surgeries and shoes that they purchase and all of that stuff. In the past year, this is because of the age group, I guess, I know 3 people that I play with who had cataract surgery. That's not related to pickleball, but it's related to age.
Right, yeah.
So 3 people, but they're back playing. I also know 2 people who've had heart attacks, and they're back to playing. So, people recover, and people want to get back on the courts.
Well, I think it's good for physical activity and social ability.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
to meet people, be with people.
Yeah.
And as you say in the Y, you're always playing with for and against different people.
Right.
All right, well, Nelson Ball, George Fortier, thanks for being on the sidelines and giving us the insides to pickleball.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
This is Paul McGrath saying, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you at the game or on the pickleball court. And if you're not in the game or on the pickleball court, I hope to see you on the sidelines.